A lot of money, time, and effort go into making the massive superhero movies that we see these days. But sometimes, even with a ton of work behind them, the movies present some moments that leave fans just scratching their heads. For this list, we're taking a look at some of the more puzzling moments from giant Marvel and DC blockbuster films. Enjoy the video, let us know what you think, and be sure to subscribe to CBR and join the notification squad to stay up to date on all of our brand new videos. Here are 10 superhero movie moments that make absolutely no sense. Man of Steel, destruction and murder. There were two moments that upset fans and caused a lot of controversy in Man of Steel. The first was Superman murdering Zod himself, which some people deemed as crude and uncharacteristic, while others saw as necessary and for the greater good. Regardless of where you stand on the decision, showing Superman snapping his neck was probably not all that necessary. On top of all that, the choice to make the fight take place right in the center of Metropolis, causing an insane amount of damage and likely hundreds of casualties, is one that received a ton of scrutiny over the years and is something that still has audiences scratching their heads. Superman is supposed to embody heroism, and the decision to have him at the center of so much death and destruction was definitely puzzling, to say the least. Deadpool. Francis? Although it was snubbed at the Oscars, Deadpool was one of the best movies of 2016, and The Merc with a Mouth showed the world just how good and financially successful an R-rated superhero movie can be. The movie packs tons of memorable jokes, but unfortunately, one of the running gags from the film also led to a pretty glaring plot hole. When Wade is setting up to square off against Ajax, he finds out that his real name is Francis, and then decides to call him that for the remainder of the film. The problem is, when Wilson goes around asking everyone where Francis is, they should have no idea who he's talking about, as everyone else only knows the villain as Ajax. While this may have been a funny joke, it probably made Deadpool's manhunt a lot more difficult than it needed to be. Suicide Squad. Why them? Suicide Squad is now an Academy Award-winning film, which means that it must be now scrutinized even harder than it was before. The film goes a long way to make sure that audiences know that these characters are the bad guys, and their first Amanda Weller rescue mission seems like just the right type of job for the Black Ops team. However, things get a bit more confusing when Enchantress starts to terrorize the city, and for some reason the Suicide Squad is tasked with dealing with this. This seems like it may make sense, until you realize that the Flash, Wonder Woman, and Batman are all active during this time, and should probably be the ones dealing with the problem. We have to hope that the Wonder Woman or Justice League movies will deal with the plot hole and explain their whereabouts, but who knows. Guardians of the Galaxy, Covenant Orb. Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most entertaining comic book movies of all time, and fans can't wait to see more of the Galactic Heroes in Volume 2 and Avengers Infinity War. While the first Guardians movie was great, it's not without flaws, and there's one plot hole that director James Gunn actually had to address in the DVD commentary. When the movie starts, Star-Lord is retrieving the orb from Morag, but doesn't it just seem a little too convenient that all the other characters just so happen to show up at exactly the same time? Gunn explained that this convenient timing is due to the fact that Morag had been underwater for 300 years, but we find it hard to believe that with all the ships and tech in the galaxy, they couldn't venture underwater to take a look. The convenient encounter is probably best just as being a fun and useful way to open up the movie. It's a small plot hole, but if the director addresses it himself, we know it's legit. Batman vs. Superman. Batman, serial killer. Regardless of whether you loved or hated Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, there was definitely a lot to discuss when the film premiered in 2016. Director Zack Snyder and his team made a lot of bold choices with the movie, but one of the most confusing decisions was to turn the beloved Caped Crusader into a serial killer. All of a sudden, the hero, whose no-kill rule is a huge part of his personality in the comics, is indiscriminately murdering men left, right, and center. If you're a fan of Batman, this was probably a pretty uncomfortable sight, even though some of the hand-to-hand combat was quite impressive. While some people enjoyed seeing a darker side of the Dark Knight, this was, for the most part, seen as a major problem with an already divisive film. Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn's transformation. In the months and years leading up to Suicide Squad, most of the buzz was centered around Jared Leto's new take on the Joker, but when the movie premiered, fans were shocked with just how little they actually got to see of the Clown Prince in the final edit. Not only did this damage the Joker's character, but Harley Quinn's origin story was also completely botched as a result. By the time Harley decides to jump into that vat of chemicals, we have no real idea why she loves the Joker or what he did to break her. True fans of the source material would have loved to see that complicated and often abusive relationship fleshed out, but for some reason the studio opted to cut it out completely. Unfortunately, this decision ended up having a hugely negative effect on the vibe of the entire film, and we have to think that a lot of people would agree that the decision just made no sense. Spider-Man, sparing the robber. There's definitely a lot to love about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, or at least the first two installments, but there is one big plot hole that has always bugged fans. A huge part of Spider-Man's origin is rooted in the tragedy of his Uncle Ben being killed by a robber, and the movie made it pretty clear that this was the same robber that Peter Parker had let free a few scenes earlier. Although it would have been impossible for Peter Parker to know that the robber would go ahead and kill his uncle, we have to think that it's a bit suspect that the up-and-coming superhero with the knack for justice would just let this villain walk away. We understand that the emotional weight of the storyline adds to the hero, and we can see how it's a useful device for the plot. It's just somewhat confusing to see a superhero letting a robber walk away from his dirty deeds. Iron Man 3, giving his address. Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is one of the more intriguing superhero movie characters of all time, as he is both incredibly powerful, yet deeply flawed. One of his biggest flaws has always been his ego, and that's definitely what led to this shockingly strange moment where Tony decided to invite his enemy, a terrorist organization, to come face him right in his home. I mean, we get that he's a very powerful and rich man, but who in their right mind would invite the Mandarin to their home? While this flawed moment does add to the overall character arc of Tony Stark, we still think it's a very strange moment that doesn't make much sense for anyone who's thinking straight. Then again, whoever said that Iron Man was always thinking straight? Batman vs. Superman. Martha. The Martha moment from 2016's Batman vs. Superman has become one of the most ridiculed and hated movie moments in recent memory. While some of the decisions made on this list can be tossed up for debate, we have to say that this confusing superhero movie moment was just a bad call. The movie was called Batman vs. Superman, and the whole world was ready to watch these two titans face off, and to choose to end their fight by having the characters connect over their mother's name is downright ridiculous. The infamous moment has been memed endlessly, and we have to hope that the coming DCEU movies will try to make up for this decision. X-Men Days of Future Past, Quicksilver's Super Speed. It's no secret that the X-Men movies have been inconsistent in quality, but we think that everyone can agree that anytime we get to see Quicksilver using his super speed, it's totally awesome. Unfortunately, as awesome as it is, it also raises quite a few questions. And the biggest of them all is, why doesn't Quicksilver use his super speed all the time to defeat his foes? With his powers, he could theoretically sneak up and destroy all of his enemies before they even had the chance to realize it. And yet, he only uses his powers in the movies a handful of times. We understand that having him destroy all the evil forces in the blink of an eye would make for a pretty boring movie, but it's definitely a plot hole nonetheless. And that brings us to the end of our list of 10 superhero movie moments that make absolutely no sense. What did you think of our list? Can you explain any of these confusing moments? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more fun videos like this one. And as always, thanks for watching.